Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today it is time for Friday Reads on January 3rd. Happy New Year! And I am glad to be back with regular Friday Reads. There's been assortment of interruptions the past few weeks, and it's been kind of hit and miss, but today is a good old-fashioned Friday Reads with a little bit of a backlog. But I hope that you had a good New Year's and that you are having a peaceful and happy beginning to 2025. And let's just get right into it. Okay, TV viewing. Once we were finished watching Christmas specials, we watched Black Doves on Netflix, and that's really fun. It is, if you like shows like The Americans, Slow Horses, The Diplomat, it's a fun show. It has a completely ridiculous plot. The plot is absurd, but there's really good dialogue. It has humor. There's good chemistry between the characters. It has Keira Knightley and Ben Whishaw as a spy and a hitman who are really good friends. And she also happens to be married to this kind of upwardly mobile guy who's the defense secretary, but he has an eye on becoming the prime minister. But she just happens to be this spy on the side, so it's already kind of ridiculous. And then he's a hitman who has been out of the country for a number of years, and we gradually find out why. And so we get their current story of what's going on. It has something to do with a Chinese ambassador getting murdered and his daughter is missing. And it really never makes a lot of sense, but we go to the backstory of when they met and then what happened that caused him to leave town for so long. It has been renewed for a second season, so I'll probably watch it again, even though the plot is just wheels off. Now we started watching Yellowjackets, also on Netflix, and that we've only seen 2 episodes, and it's intense. It's intense, and it's right on the outer limits of my gore tolerance, but the plot is quite intriguing. And I know we're kind of late to the party on this. There's been 2 seasons, and I think there's going to be a 3rd season, but there's 2 time periods. In the 90s, there's a soccer team, a girls' high school soccer team that's made its way to nationals. And so on the trip to nationals on the airplane, it crashes, and now they're stranded out in a forest on a mountain. And then in the current day, the women are, I guess in their 40s, and all I know is that so for some reason they ended up being stranded for like a year and a half, and it gets really dark and bizarre because there's little clips and flashbacks that look cannibalistic and creepy, and then kind of, I don't know. Things about to go all Lord of the Flies, I guess. But in the current day, they're receiving these ominous postcards, and there's this person who says she's a reporter that wants to know what really happened, and I don't know, everybody's strange and messed up, and that's all I got so far. But it's good, it's intense, it's weird, it's kind of scary and gross, and we'll see what happens. Let's get on to the roundup of books. So right after Christmas, I picked up, it's gone back to the library, but I did read the second Monk and Robot book by Becky Chambers. So I really loved A Psalm for the Wild Built. So I picked up A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is book 2. Really hope she's working on a book 3, because this is just such a calm and positive little slice of wonder and joy. And it's science fiction, but it's kind of cozy, but it's not cutesy. And it's a continuation. The second one's a continuation. It's not really a sequel. It just kind of picks up right where the first one left off, on the travels of Mosscap and Dex, a human who is a tea monk and a robot who has come out of the wild to learn about humans. Just the whole book, the idea of seeing everyday life and things that you take for granted, the small things that you didn't think needed explaining, but when you look at it from the point of view of someone who has no context and no experience with those customs or traditions or habits or affinities, how it just really opens up, it really opens you up to empathy, to looking at things from another point of view. So that's kind of the underlying message there, is to keep your eyes and your ears and your heart open and really experience life, not just through yourself, but through others. I'm interested to see where they go next in their personal journeys and their physical journeys. Then I was also reading a longer, slower book along the way there between Christmas and New Year's, and that was This Is Happiness by Niall Williams. Now, I'm going to tell you, this was the slowest paced book I read all year. And I don't mean that in any negative way at all. It's just, and it's kind of long, but it's not a big giant chunker, but it's a very quiet, slow-paced book. It would have made it into my quiet gems if I hadn't already made that video before I read the book. And I really did enjoy it, but I had to really slow my pace to appreciate this book, and I just read it alongside a number of other short things, and that worked out really well. The plot of the book is about rural electrification in Ireland. I had to do a little side research, and I found out that the rural electrification was not completed until the mid-70s. And based on different little snippets and hints in this book, I think they're in the 60s. They're not the very last town in Ireland to receive electricity, but they're kind of coming on the tail end of the project. So it's the 1960s, and the town is being prepared for electricity. And this seismic change comes about at the same time that the weather abruptly changes from a persistent raininess to a period of sunshine. And so just when some of the workers associated with the electric company are rolling into town, the sun comes out, people are opening the windows and putting all this stuff out in the yard to air out. And so it's this whole big season of change. The story's being narrated by No Crow. His name is Noel, but his nickname is No, so he's No Crow. And he has been sent to live with his grandparents after mildly disgracing the family by dropping out of seminary school. He had promised his mother on her deathbed that he would become a priest. It was a rash decision, and he's 17 years old, and he's gone through about a year of it, and he sort of lost his faith and his interest in this endeavor, and he drops out. And so he's sent to live with Ganga and Dodi, his grandparents. Those are his grandparent names for them. And so he has this bird's eye view of this whole year when the electricity came in. And he becomes very close friends with Christy, a man in his 60s who is part of the electrification project. And Dodi had already offered him a spot in their extra room to be a lodger before she knew that No was also coming to stay. And so they end up being roommates together in this upstairs room, and he becomes close friends. Over the course of this year, No learns from observation and experience about a lot of things in life. And so it's not just about the electricity, it's about love, relationships, marriages, the passage of time. It's about music. It's about a lot of things. And he has this wonderful example of his grandparents' long and successful marriage and just their natural repartee, their affection for each other, the way things work. He has stories of love, found and lost. He has a lot of things to look at and to accumulate some experiences of his own. I just want to share one little passage where the pace of this story, told by the 78-year-old No, looking back, he kind of explains it and puts it in a context with music that just, it really fits the whole novel. The quiet of the country can sit on your heart like a stone. To lift it, escape the boundaries of myself a while, I took down the fiddle. One of the things about Irish music is how one tune can enter another. You can begin with one reel, and with no clear intention of where you will be going after that, but halfway through it'll sort of call up the next one, so that one reel becomes another and another after that. And unlike the clear-edged definitions of songs, the music keeps linking, making this sound map even as it travels, so player and listener are taken away and time and space are defeated. You're in an elsewhere, something like that, which I suppose is both my method and aim in telling this story too. And that is how the book moves. One story blends into another, time and space are disregarded, he moves forward and back in the narrative, and it is like a series of Irish reels. So I enjoyed it very much. I do want to read further in Niall Williams. I know he has a new book called Time of the Child, which takes place in this same town, and I think it's about some of the characters, but maybe not in the same time period. I don't know. I haven't looked too closely at that. But when I'm in the mood again for something slow and immersive, I will look further into Niall Williams. If you have any suggestions, drop them down below. So the last book that I read in 2024 was Canoes by Maylis de Kerangal. This is my copy. It doesn't really match. This is the UK edition. The American edition matches Eastbound, her last book. And maybe I find a picture and put it up here. But I ended up with the UK edition because I bought it on Blackwell's when I was getting something else. And I didn't realize until after I read it. I mean, I obviously knew that this was the shape of a canoe, but I didn't realize that what else I was seeing here is sound waves. And that is really essential in this collection. It's a collection of short stories and one novella. And I've been buddy reading this with my friend Michael, and we're kind of not quite finished discussing. We've talked about, I think, some of the short stories, but not the main novella. Each of the stories, to my surprise, is about voices. And if I had read the afterwards before I read the book, which why would I do that? I would know this. But as I began to read the stories, I realized a couple of things. One is that somewhere in each story, she does reference canoes or use the word canoe in some way. I kind of wish that she hadn't used the title Canoes. Like, if she wanted to do that, just not refer to it at all, so that I wasn't kind of on a word search. It was a little distracting. Michael made a similar comment. Once you realize that she was going to say something about canoes, to keep looking for canoes. So I kind of wish she'd just done it and called it something else. Because really what it's about is different explorations about the importance of voice. So one story is about a woman who meets up with an old friend, and her friend, she's realizing there's something different about her. She can't quite put her finger on it. And then she realizes her voice is different. Her voice is at a different pitch and tone. And her friend is really excited when she notices this, because she has deliberately been training her voice to come into a lower register for her job on radio. And then they disagree about that, about whether or not that is just misogynistic, whether it is just why does she need to change her voice? And they have very different opinions about the value of this and the purpose of this. In another story, there is a man whose daughter is imploring him to change his answering machine because his wife died 5 years ago and she's still on the outgoing message, and he just hasn't been able to bring himself to erase her voice. And the daughter is telling him, this is starting to creep people out. You really need to change it. And he just can't, because it reminds him of everything that was happening when she made the recording. The central novella is my favorite piece. And I kind of wondered if there was any autobiographical aspect to it, because it's set in the 90s and it's about a woman who travels to the US with her husband and child because he has gotten into a graduate program or a postdoc or something like this in Colorado. She's having a hard time assimilating or fitting in. She feels like her husband and her child are adapting much more quickly. Part of it is language, because her English is not that strong. But even when he goes ahead of her for several weeks, and then when she meets up with him, she feels a difference in his voice and his speech. Just the fact that he is speaking a different language changes the way his face moves and the muscles. And it's just these stories just explore voice as a physical and emotional experience in a lot of different ways that are quite interesting. Oh, and I forgot to mention, it's a translated book. She is French, and these are translated by Jessica Moore. Also, there is something really, really emotionally powerful buried in the center of the story, which just sheds a light on the entire experience. So a good collection that I'm not done talking about, so I may have more to say about it in the future. Then we come up to New Year's, January 1st, and I participated in a buddy reading event with my friend Michael on New Year's Day of The Uncommon Reader by Alan Bennett. So, first of all, this counts as my Anne book for the Ben Reads Good Challenge because it was by Anne Bennett, and this was a reread for me. It is such a delightful little novella. If you have never read An Uncommon Reader, I hope that you will. It would be a great one for Shorty September or anytime you need just a kinder, gentler, humorous read. And the premise of this story, if you have never read it, is that the Queen of England stumbles upon a bookmobile near the grounds of the palace when she is trying to gather up her dogs. And she goes into the bookmobile and she has an encounter with the man that runs the mobile. And there's one person in there looking for a book who works in the kitchen. So a young man named Norman. And so she meets Norman. She borrows a book, and this is the beginning of her journey to becoming a reader later in life. This book is such a little postcard or a little Valentine to readers everywhere because she experiences all the joys of how reading leads to more reading, and then it leads to deeper reading. And Norman becomes her reading pal, and they share books back and forth. She becomes completely distracted and frustrated with her everyday responsibilities, much to the chagrin of her family and staff who try to sabotage her book obsession. It never really works. And she begins to lament the fact that she's had an opportunity to meet so many famous writers in her life, and she didn't have anything to talk to them about when it happened. And she has that bittersweet feeling that all of a sudden she knows there's so much to read and not enough time, which who has not had that feeling? I won't tell you anymore because you need to read it yourself and experience the pleasure. And it's so funny. And I really loved reading this on New Year's Day with Michael. Just read and checked in back and forth throughout the day. It was just a lovely little time. I started another thing on January 1st, and I have to thank Marcia Johansson, my friend and viewer, for reminding me about the Reader's Book of Days. So a couple of months ago, I did a video kind of in a sporadic recurring series where I do a little tour through a shelf in my library. And when I was doing this shelf tour through a nonfiction shelf, I came across this book that I've had for like a decade. And it's called A Reader's Book of Days by Tom Nissley. And when I got it, my plan was to use it each day and read the entry all through the year. And there's a page for each day with some literary historical bits. It might be about an author or a book or just some kind of literary tidbits. And so I never did it. I got the book and I just totally forgot to do this, but I kept the book all this time. So I rediscover it during this video, set it aside, put it out on my ottoman so that I wouldn't forget, and then I piled all kinds of stuff on top of it. And when I did my January TBR, I totally forgot about it. And Marcia put a comment and said, hey, what about the Book of Days? Because she went and got one and was planning to follow it every year after she saw it in the video. So thank you, Marcia, for jogging my memory. And I rescued the Book of Days out of the pile, and I have started reading it. So what else am I reading right now? All of these January reading events are all kind of starting at once. And I had a moment of panic about participating and getting everything off the ground simultaneously. But I'm chilling out now. I realize I don't have to start everything all at once. I can stagger a little bit and I still will be okay. So one thing that has begun is my reading project called Endless Drama, which is on Discord, and also there's a Storygraph challenge that was put together by the wonderful Amelia, a viewer who you've seen here and on lots of channels who has a real talent for putting together Storygraph challenges. So I will put the links to my Discord and the Storygraph below if you would like to join in. We've just barely got started and we have a whole year of 20th and 21st century plays to enjoy. So read a few, read a lot, read one, read them all, whatever you like to do. But we have started with Pygmalion by George Bernard Shaw. And this is exciting, this is my first ebook as well. So I checked out Pygmalion from the library, but it was this a very tiny print copy. Everything was smushed and really close together, and there wasn't space between the different characters' lines. And it was, as soon as I opened it, it was, you know, sometimes when you open a book that has bad spacing or font, you just open it and you go, oh, like you just, it's like a recoil. It just, you think, this isn't going to go well. So I went to Project Gutenberg and I downloaded it on my Christmas present, my brand new iPad. I don't think that the camera and the lighting is adequately displaying the fabulosity of this pink iPad. I'm on Act 4 this morning and I am having a great time. It's going really well. In fact, I'm actually mostly reading it this way, or maybe I'm reading it this way, and then I could try it this way. And I'm having fun playing with the settings and fooling around with this. And so I did ask, this is what I asked for Christmas, an iPad and to go to the Barnes & Noble after Christmas sale. Those wishes were fulfilled. And I also got some other lovely gifts as well, but this isn't a video about my Christmas haul, but I did want to share my bookish toy, my new iPad, so I can use it for browsing, YouTube, reading, all kinds of wonderful things, and I love it so much. So I'm reading Pygmalion, and the discussion is beginning, and please join us and jump in. It's a play. So far it's funny, and there's also some interesting social commentary. It's a story of Eliza Doolittle, a flower seller, who wants to improve her speech and diction and the way she presents herself so that she could get a job in a flower shop. And it's about Henry Higgins and his friend Colonel Pickering, who make a bet amongst each other that they can train Eliza in 6 months' time enough to pass her off as, what do they want to pass her off as? A duchess or something, I think. I forgot that part. What they're going to take her to a big event and pass her off. That's the premise. I'm not going to tell you any more about it because we just barely started the discussion. All right. Also, I started reading the book Clean by Alia, Trabucco, Zeran, and I'm reading this to participate in the group hosted by Roz from Scally Dandling about the books and Katja from Page Turns with Katja. It's called Reading the Globe. And so this is the January entry. The author is Chilean, and it is translated by Sophie Hughes. And I only just started, but it is so intense and gripping right from the start. There is a woman named Estella who is in an interrogation room, and she's talking. She's assuming that there are people behind a two-way glass that she can't see, but that are listening in, and she is telling a story of what has happened with this family that she has worked for as a housekeeper and nanny for 7 years that would result in the child being dead. And right from the start, it is just so good. There's so much tension, underlying feelings of dread and violence and just a kind of a threatening atmosphere and anger. And we don't know for sure about this narrator. She's telling the story about her employment at this family. And so I think I'm going to gobble this up. I'm going to finish Pygmalion, and I'll probably gobble this book up across this weekend because it's just really good already. And then as soon as I finish one of those, I'm going to start Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli, and this is for Mari Andrea's project. Her channel is Books and Bocadillas, and that's also the name of her book club that she has started on a Discord for this year, reading Latinx fiction. This book is written in English. The author is of Mexican heritage, and it has to do with a family road trip, and I think it has to do also with immigration issues. I don't really know, but it's supposed to be really good. It's been on my TBR for a couple of years, and the discussion has kind of started, and people are already really enthusiastic about it. So the FOMO is building, and I'm going to get to it really soon. After that, I have a number of group and buddy reads, and then personal things. I don't know exactly the order, but in the coming week, some other things will shuffle into their place, and I'll talk about them next Friday. Okay, I think that's it. And is that not enough? So I hope that you've had a wonderful start to your reading year. Let me know in the comments what you are reading right now, or if you've already finished something spectacular in just these first couple days. Have a great weekend. I'm going to be doing a haul video on Tuesday. I want to share with you some things that have come into my library over the holidays, gifts, and that little post-Christmas shopping trip, and just all kinds of goodness. So I'll be back soon, and take care.